Welcome to the Cross in the Desert, speaking hope and freedom to Iran. My name is Randy L. Noble, so very glad that you joined me on this special segment. Let me ask you a question. When you think about Iran, what are the images that come into your mind? Do you imagine a hostile crowd holding up signs saying "Death to America"? Or do you think about the current nuclear showdown between Israel and Iran? They're sitting on a powder keg. Most of these images that we think of, the sign-carrying images, the nuclear showdown, are portrayed very strongly by the media. But my question tonight for you is that who Iran really is? Well, let me try to help answer that for you. I have a dear Facebook friend. Her name is Arzu Husseini. She's 25 years old, and she's a nurse living in Isfahan. Now, recently I had an online chat with Arzu, like I do with most of my friends in Iran. We chat pretty much daily. And I told Arzu, I said, look here, I'm doing a live blog talk radio program now. And when she heard about that, she got very excited and she said, would you please tell your listeners who the real Iran is? And I thought about what she asked me. And I said, Arzu, please do this for me. I want you to write down in your own words, as if you were a guest on my program. I want you to write down who you think Iran really is, how you want to portray your country to the world. What would you tell them about your country? And she thought about it. She says, I'll get back to you. Well, a couple of days later, I got a short email from Arzu, and she shared with me from her heart, in her own words, what she thought people should know about the real Iran. And I was so touched by her short story. You can tell in this story her honesty and her kindness is so reflective because she's sharing it from the heart. And what I want to do here on the Cross in the Desert today is I want to be a voice for my dear friend Arzu. I want to read her little story to you, what she's trying to convey about who Iran really is. Because what she's trying to do is overcome all of the stereotypes, all of the false images that most of us have about Iran. And what Arzu is trying to say is, here is the government, and here is who I am, and here is who all Iranians are. You see, the government is hostile, oppressive, and they are the real terrorists in the world. And unfortunately, Arzu and many of my friends live under this oppressive dictatorship. And what the media does most of the time is they focus on the government and they miss out on who the real Iran is and who are the real Iranians. And so Arzu is going to speak to you. I'm going to be her voice. And here's what she has to say. I loved this little story. And it's the title of my blog, The Cross in the Desert. We are not your enemy. Putting a face on real Iranians. Here's what Arzu writes. I feel bad when I see that most Americans don't know about the real Iran. They don't even know where Iran is located. They don't even know that Iranians are the old Persians. I am not talking for my government. I am talking for my people. We love you, Americans. We love all people who are living on this planet. We are not your enemy. We are not terrorists, because we are the people who love humanity and fight for freedom. We are not Arabs. We have our own great history. We are the great children of Cyrus, who freed the slaves more than 2,500 years ago, and who had written the first charter of the rights of the nations of the world. If you like poetry, I bet Iran will be a best choice for you to come. Here is the land of Hafez and Khayyam, two great poets. If you like history, it will be exciting for you to visit places which existed more than 7,000 years ago. And I am sure that you will love Iranians, people with great hospitality and honesty. This really touched my heart deeply. I want to go over some key things that Arzu mentioned. She lamented the fact that most Americans don't even know where Iran is on the map. They don't know much about Iran. They only go by what they've been told. And they don't understand that the real Iran goes way back before the Islamic invasion in the 7th century. Iran has a real history. And Arezou points out, she says, you know, I'm not speaking about my government. I'm not speaking for them. I'm speaking for all Iranians. And this is what she says. We love you Americans. That's really special. And then she says, we're not the real terrorists. We are ones that are fighting for our own existence, fighting for our own freedoms. And then she mentions that we have a history. We're not Arabs. We're children of Cyrus. And she's referring to the great King Cyrus, which is actually mentioned in the Bible, who was the king of Persia at one time. And there were people living under his rule, but Cyrus treated them with fairness and dignity, and he enscrolled his rule on the Cyrus cylinder, which is a part of history today. Actually, it's owned part and parcel, not just by Iran, but a copy of that Cyrus cylinder is in the United Nations all over the world. It's shown. This Cyrus cylinder talks about how Cyrus the Great, the king of Persia, treated with fairness the people under him, unlike the government who oppresses its people today. And then Arezou talks about, we are a poetic nation. We have two of the greatest poets in the world, Hafez, Khayyam, and Rumi, to mention another one. It's very important that you hear her heart here. And she is going against all the stereotypes. And she is trying to say, if you want to know the real Iran, let me tell you about who they are. So I just so appreciate Arezou. You can read this particular blog by just going to thecrossinthedesert.blogspot.com, and you'll see a list of all of my other blogs. Now I want to briefly mention, in the few minutes we have left, a very historical thing just took place on August 3rd. Iran installed their new president, Hassan Rouhani. Hassan Rouhani, of course, replaces Ahmadinejad after his term has been served. He has touted himself as being a moderate, with this openness to the West to talk about things, issues, sanctions, the nuclear program. And because of his moderate claims when he was elected on June 14th, there was no violence like there was 4 years earlier. And so, what are we to make of Rouhani? Is he really a moderate, or was this a tactic of the regime to quell any violence like they had in the previous election by saying, well, look at Rouhani, he's a moderate? Who is Hassan Rouhani? Well, there are many ways to answer that. In fact, you can find out more on this by going to my Blog Talk Radio link on my Facebook page. I did a program on August 4th all about this, and it's much more detailed. But I thought what would be interesting and helpful for you is if you hear from a lady who lived in Iran and can tell you a little bit about Hassan Rouhani before he became president. And there's a blog I wrote about this called Hassan Rouhani, a moderate or a murderer? Well, let's let you decide. I want to read to you a brief article that my friend Nasrin Mohammadi, who now lives in Los Angeles, wrote this article about her brother. She wrote a book also about her brother who was killed in Iran in 2006 under the slavish Iranian regime. And the name of that book is Ideas and Lashes, The Prison Diary of Akbar Mohammadi. It's a very incredibly powerful but yet painful book to read. It's his diary of what he went through. Now here's what Nasrin writes about Rouhani and her brother. She writes, quote, I was born and raised in Iran under a regime that has degraded my nation and our values in life. As a person who lost almost everything in her life in Iran, it breaks my heart to see that the U.S. government ignores all values which our nation cherishes and plays a double standard with respect to other nations, specifically Iran. It was so disappointing to see over 130 congressmen sign up for a talk with Islamic President Rouhani, so-called president-elect. I say so-called because there is no democratic election in Iran. Iranians are coerced to go to the voting polls under the threat that if they don't, they could lose their government benefits. What were the reasons for your desperate measures, Nasrin asks. Don't you know who Rouhani is? He was one of the major players in oppressing Iranian dissidents from the early time of the revolution up to now. Nobody knows better than me who lost her brother, Akbar Mohammadi, arrested under Rouhani's direct order and later killed in prison after serving 7 years of incarceration. Akbar was a non-violent political and human rights activist, a voice of hope and freedom while studying at Tehran University. Akbar was a caring person. He could not bear injustice and cruelty. He would donate his last pennies to others if he knew that they were in need. Akbar was a brave, generous, and a caring person. On July 9th, 1999, Akbar, along with some of his friends, tried to stop the security forces from entering the campus that were attacking students. According to the recent article wrote by one of his cellmates, a prominent political prisoner, Heshmat Tabazadi, said of Akbar, quote, he had 3 outstanding characteristics which made him the symbol of the student resistance: bravery, truthfulness, and resistance. Tabazardi also added on his bravery, it suffices to say, when he was sentenced to death at the beginning of his trial, he started to prosecute the judge by undermining his legitimacy and made it the trial of the judge instead. Akbar never exaggerated the extent of his tortures he endured. He never recanted his belief or convictions while undergoing the most barbaric of tortures. On July 30th, 2006, Akbar finally died as the result of torture on the 8th day of his hunger strike. Political prisoners, along with the student movement in Iran, designated July 30th as, quote, National Student Resistance Day. Rouhani is one of the major players in killing Akbar and thousands more of Iranian people while serving as the director of the national security. Rouhani was inaugurated on the same day that he ordered the killing of Yahub Mir Nahad, the first blogger, in 2008. Late Mahur Nahad was a journalist and the editor of the Mardom Salar News, that was a paper in Sistan and Balochistan. He was hanged in August of 2008. This is sad. Rouhani, a moderate or a murderer? According to Nasrin, he was one of the key people that had her brother killed, and many of other Iranians who participated in the student uprising of 1999. Only time will tell what is going to happen as Iran moves forward with their nuclear program. What will Rouhani do? We can only wait and see. And as far as Christians, we should pray for this man. Pray that God will touch this man's heart to truly give freedom to the many, many people living in oppression and fear in Iran. Our God is mighty and powerful and persuasive, and He is in charge of all of the kingdoms of the world. I want to thank you so much for spending this brief time with me on the Cross in the Desert. You can find all of this information, my blogs, my Blog Talk Radio interviews, on my Facebook page, Randy L. Noble. And you can also friend request me. I would be glad to share all of this information with you online. It is a pleasure to meet with you today. I will see you on the next edition of The Cross in the Desert. Goodbye, and God bless you.